Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to paint a Stormcast Eternal from start to finish using Army Painter paints. Started off by basing it with matte black, and then we're going to go ahead and switch over to True Copper from the Air Paint line to base the rest of the model. Once we're finished with the airbrush, we're going to switch over to adding some depth to the metallic areas using Pallid Bone as a wash here. We're going to want to use this over all of the metallic areas, the shield, the armor, everything that will be this bronze color. And you can absolutely use a wash here instead. You can use strong tone or soft tone to get this same effect. Personally, I really like how the speed paints look over the metallics, so we'll be going and using speed paints for this video as our washes. And here in the beginning stages, you can be a little bit messier. It doesn't really matter if we get some extra speed paint over certain areas that won't need it, because we will be covering everything but the metallic parts up with a different color. Next up, we're going to move on to our first base coat color with plate mail metal, going over all of the chainmail and the blade of the spear on the miniature here. And at this stage, we'll want to be a little bit more careful around those bronze areas, trying not to get any paint over those. If you do, however, just go ahead and take some True Copper and cover that area back up. Now with this metallic and all the other base coats that we're going to be doing on this model, really, you'll want to do two thin coats to get a nice even coverage on all these areas. Other than the blade and the chainmail, you can go ahead and use this color, the plate mail metal, to accent the model with any other details you feel are necessary. And especially on these darker areas of the model where I mainly just covered it with matte black instead of the metallic, you'll want to use two thin coats if you have any areas like that for yourself. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and switch over to weapon bronze for cleaning up all of the edges here on the weapon. As you can see, I didn't base the spear as well as the rest of the model. And that was intentional. I didn't really want the whole thing covered in weapon bronze. So we'll just go ahead and go through with this color and finish that off. And once your weapon bronze in these areas on the spear are dry, go ahead and switch back to Pallid Bone really quick, just to use that as a wash and give the area some definition. Up next, we're going to switch over to Grim Black mixed with a little bit of Speed Paint Medium, and this is going to act as our wash over the plate mail metal areas that we just painted. And using the speed paints as a wash really gives you a nice matte finish over your metallics, which I think is great for adding highlights on top of. Another benefit is that they dry a little bit faster than the washes themselves, so it'll take less time for you to get back into doing details on your model. If you do happen to get any of this speed paint mixture over your bronze areas or anywhere where you don't really want it, just go ahead and very quickly take a dry brush and wipe it away. It should come off no problem. Moving on to our regular acrylics, we're going to use Mold Berry to paint the spear shaft, as well as the handle on the dagger that's on his belt there. Again, be very careful around the bronze and silver areas that we painted already. If you do need to fix those, just be sure to cover them up back with their respective color. and use the speed paint wash technique that we did before to get it back to where it was. Like the rest of our base coat colors, we're going to want to use 2 thin coats on this area to get a nice even cover. And if you're interested in trying out any of the new Speed Paint 2.0s or the Warpaint Fanatics, we have these sets available over at wargamesdelivered.com or on our Amazon page. If you're interested, there are links below in the description for you to check those out yourself. As you can see, I'm moving the model around to get the right angle for some of these areas. It's always best to move the model to make it more comfortable for you to paint, rather than overextending and making mistakes. Moving on to our next base coat color, we're going to switch over to oak brown for all of the straps, the scabbard, and the belt on the model. These areas are all very close to areas that we've already painted, so again, be very careful around these areas. And sometimes when you're base coating smaller details like this, it's more beneficial to switch to a smaller brush. It may take a little bit longer, but there's less chance of error. And once you have your straps and belt base coated, we're going to switch over to matte black for the next step. And with this, we're going to use this on the areas behind the knees. This step is optional, you don't really have to do this, but I think it breaks up the armor and adds a little bit more realism to the model. It looks like I forgot to put the paint on the tray here for you guys to see, but this is Imperial Navy that we're switching over to for our next base coat from the new Fanatic line. And with this, we're going to cover the face of the shield and the shoulder pads on the miniature. With the shield, we are going to be covering up the lightning bolts with a different color, so don't worry about being messy over those. Just try to be careful around the rim of the shield and the center face that's in the shield as well. Now in the shield there is a lot of raised areas and details, so we'll want to be very careful and use 2 to 3 thin coats of this base coat to get a nice even coverage on it. Adding 3 coats will take a little bit longer than normal, but it is a good way to make sure that you won't lose any detail by adding too thick of paint onto the shield. Once you have the shield finished off, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the shoulder pads. We're going to do the same exact thing on those, same color, Imperial Navy, and same consistency and amount of coats. So 2 to 3 thin coats, just to get nice even coverage on the shield and the shoulder pads as well. With the shoulder pads, the only area that you're going to want to avoid is the center insignia there on both sides. We're going to be using a different color on those insignias, so just keep that in mind. You can cover it up with the blue if you'd like to. If not, you can just leave it blank. If you've made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. There is giveaways attached with all of our videos. So if you're new here, be sure to check out the pinned comment on this video to enter the giveaway, and best of luck. And from here, we're going to switch over to ash gray for our final base coat stage. This is what we're going to use over the insignias on the shoulder pads and the lightning bolts on the shield as well. So you may want a smaller brush to get those nice details. And be sure to have a little bit of the Imperial Navy, the color that we just used in the last step, on your palette when you're doing this step, because we will probably need to go a little bit back and forth. It's easy to be messy when working on these smaller details, so don't feel bad about that. Just go ahead and keep another set of Imperial Navy on your palette and switch over whenever you need to correct a mistake. As you can see, I'm going very slow here, just trying to color in these details as neatly as possible. And now we'll switch over to our wash stage for all of our regular acrylics. Starting off with Strong Skin Shade, we're going to use this on all of the oak brown areas that we painted, as well as the mold berry areas. So the belts and the straps, and the shaft of the spear. And as usual with your washes, if you have any pooling in any areas before they dry, be sure to just take a dry brush and wipe those away. This is how you avoid that sort of coffee stain look that you get with washes sometimes if they pool and dry in certain areas. Okay. And next up, we're going to switch over to dark tone for all of the blue areas, the shield and the shoulder pads, and the white areas as well. You can cover the entire shield, except for the metallic areas, and the shoulder pads. We're actually washing the ash gray with this as well, so don't worry about being careful around those areas. As with all standard washes, you'll want to give this about 25 to 30 minutes to dry. And lastly, we'll move on to the highlighting stage. Starting off with Fur Brown, we're going to cover all of the edges that we can with this color on the oak brown areas, all of the straps and belts. We're going to go ahead and give them a nice edge highlight with the Fur Brown. As you can see, I've switched to a smaller, thinner brush to give myself a bit more control on these areas. Moving on to the spear shaft, we're going to switch over to Basilisk Red, and I'm actually going to use a small dry brush on this area because it's got a lot of texture to it. And this is a very quick and easy way to add some detail to it. Of course, you can do this with a standard paintbrush. It'll just take a little bit longer, and I think that this kind of texture lends itself well to a dry brush kind of technique. Once you've got a nice highlight with the Basilisk Red, we're going to switch over to Matte White and Ash Gray mixed to a 1:1 ratio. We're going to use this to highlight all of the lightning bolts and the raised insignias on the shoulder pads. At this stage, you'll want the most control over your brush and paint possible, so use the best brush that you can get to a fine point, smaller brush or a larger brush, as long as it comes to a fine point and makes these very tiny areas easy to get to. We're also going to highlight the insignias on the shoulder pads, again leaving some of that shade and ash gray showing underneath to add a little bit of definition to these areas. When working on highlights like this, especially with whites, you'll want to build up in layers. I did about 2 layers on each of the insignias and the lightning bolts on the shield to get a nice full color of highlight here. We'll also go ahead and highlight the lightning bolt on the other shoulder pad as well, bringing them both up to the same kind of color. And if you do make any large mistakes in the highlighting stage, just feel free to go ahead and go back over with dark tone, re-wash it, and then re-highlight. And for our last detail here with the highlighting stage, we're going to go ahead and switch over to Crystal Blue and use this to highlight the shoulder pads on the Mini. just brightening them up a little bit. There's also a small edge on the shields that's sticking out that we'll cover as well. Once that's finished, feel free to base your miniature in whatever theme you have based your army in, and your Stormcast Vindictor is ready for the battlefield. Thank you guys so much for watching this Army Painter Masterclass tutorial. Be sure to stick around for more videos, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!